Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to come once again to Lisbon. For those of you who don't know, the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work is based in Bilbao, and we are Europe's information provider on all aspects of occupational safety and health. We provide information for policymakers, we provide information for researchers, and most importantly, we provide information for people in the workplace, the managers, the supervisors, the workers, and their representatives. Now, I must first start with 3 apologies. First, my director sends her apologies. She was unable to attend because there is a parallel meeting for the European presidency in Sofia, in Bulgaria. Secondly, I must apologize because I am a native English speaker and sadly I do not speak Portuguese. However, I will try and be as clear as possible. Thirdly, I must apologize because I have a tendency to speak in the imperative rather than in the conditional. I blame this on the fact that I used to be a labour inspector. I would stress that when we're looking at the issue relating to well-being at work and positive work environments, there are many options available, there are many approaches, there are many issues that we have to look at. So I felt I should start with the good news and say that, generally speaking, work is good for you. Despite what we sometimes feel, work gives us social inclusion, it provides self-esteem, it gives us an identity and provides us with personal fulfillment. But the most recent calculations suggest that over 200,000 people each year are dying in the European Union as a result of their work. This is a huge amount. And what's equally shocking is that of that huge number, only about 3,000 of those people are dying as a result of accidents, of incidents. The vast majority are dying because of their health being affected. And this is costing us. The cost of fatal and non-fatal outcomes from poor working conditions is costing us over 3% of our GDP, our gross domestic product. And quite simply, we cannot afford this. Today, I'm going to bring 4 key messages. The first of which is that we have to get the basics of health and safety right. We cannot build a house on sand. We have to build on firm foundations. Secondly, there has to be leadership from the top of down. And leadership means not leading, not saying, do as I say, not as I do. Leading means leading by example. Next, we have to have worker engagement and participation. If only for the fact that the people doing the job know more about it than the management will do. And finally, we have to take a holistic approach considering all aspects of health and work. So I'll try and use this laser pointer just to explain this graph on this side here. This is talking about DALYs, which are disability-affected life years. This is a calculation used which adds together the years somebody lives with disability plus the years of life lost. And when we look at the EU 28, what's causing the loss? quarter of the time it's cancers. And then here we've got MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders, back pain, wrist pain, things like this. Circulatory diseases. Here just 12% are injuries, and the other include issues such as mental health problems and other health outcomes, which may well result from issues such as work-related stress. On the right here are the reported risk factors in Europe's workplaces. EU-OSHA carries out a survey which is called ESNA, and we repeat it every few years. And we ask a series of questions in Europe's workplaces. We survey over 50,000. And what we try and do is find what's in the gap between policy and outcomes. So we ask questions like, do you do a risk assessment? How do you do this? And one of the questions we ask is, what are the main risk factors in your workplace? What are the risks in your workplace? And the number one answer is dealing with difficult clients, customers, and students and other people involved in the undertaking. That's number one across all workplaces in Europe. And number two is working in tiring and painful positions, which includes excessive seating, for example. If you carry on down the list there, you have repetitive hand-arm movements. Then you get to machinery accidents, what is often seen as the basics of health and safety. But then you have lifting, vehicle accidents, time pressure, dangerous substances. So we can see that the ergonomic and psychosocial risk factors are the key issues for Europe's workforces today. And the reason the top two are in red with the percentages, these are the results for public administration. So in public administration, 3/4 of the establishments are reporting tiring and painful positions, and nearly 70% are reporting difficult customers and clients. So we have this, and we did, in our survey, we asked, how do you address these problems? And what we found is, what is not happening is what is meant to happen. We have our framework directive, the 89391 EEC, and it says you have a hierarchy of prevention. You identify the hazards, you prioritize, and you put into place the measures you need. In practice, what we've found is happening, people are going, okay, let's look at safety. Okay. If we've got time, we'll look at health. Okay. And if we've still got a bit of time, maybe we'll look at psychosocial risk factors. The interventions are not based on the priorities, they're based in what people think should be the priorities. So we need to focus on the problems. And there is another issue. We need to protect all workers. That is not just young males who are from the local area, the local society. We have to protect shift workers, part-time workers, agency workers, temporary workers, men, women, migrant workers. And we have to protect all these workers in what's termed a life course approach. There is a fact of life in Europe that we are getting old. This is not a bad thing when you consider the options. But what it means is as we age, we change. Our risk profile changes, our bodies change, our social position changes. And we have to reflect those changes over time. And one of the ways we can work well on this is actually by starting before people enter the workforce. We term it mainstreaming. So we get educating in occupational safety and health into primary, secondary, tertiary education. We cannot see our workforce as uniform. We have a diverse culture, we have a diverse workforce, and we need to reflect this in our prevention activities. When we consider the drivers and barriers for health and safety at work, we see the number one driver up here is management commitment. I'll come back to that. But down here, when we see what is the greatest barriers, first of all, there's lack of awareness amongst management, and the biggest barrier is a lack of expertise or specialist knowledge on the topic, particularly of psychosocial risk prevention, particularly the prevention of work-related stress, harassment, violence, bullying, mobbing. The picture varies greatly across Europe, but it holds true for 27 out of the 28 member states that we have a lack of expertise available to employers, to establishments, to managers. I say 27 out of 28 because, strangely enough, there seem to be more psychologists in Finland, work psychologists in Finland, than there are in the rest of Europe put together. It really is a strange cultural aspect. But we don't have enough support. We need to be working with the occupational psychologists to improve the work environment. As I said, management commitment is the key driver. We have to embed occupational safety and health into the everyday work. We can't treat it as separate. This is particularly so regarding the psychosocial risk environment, and it is especially when we're looking at creating a positive work environment. Many years ago, I was a labour inspector in the United Kingdom, and I visited a workplace. It was a factory making metal components. If you've ever been in those factories, you'll know they tend to be a bit noisy because they're hammering out metal components. And I was with the managing director, and we walked into a building, big blue signs, ear protection mandatory. And he walked straight into the building without stopping to put on any hearing protection. I stopped and stood outside, and about 5 minutes later he returns and says, "Where were you?" And I said, "What sort of example have you just set? All those workers in that shop have just seen that you don't care about health and safety at work, and they'll all be thinking, why should I care? You have to lead by example." And especially when we're looking at antisocial behaviour. If you do not confront sexist, racist behaviour, if you permit an environment that encourages a culture where people can be victimised for whatever reason, you are condoning that behaviour. It's as simple as that. Now, this is not always easy, particularly when the behaviour you're confronting is a societal norm. If you have a society where machismo or whatever is the cultural norm, then to remove it from the workplace is challenging. But you have to lead by example. I'm sorry, the text on this is a bit small because these are the industry sectors in our survey across Europe. And one of the things we asked in the survey was, do you talk about health and safety at the top levels of management? And this is public administration here. The arrow's not quite in the right place. I think it's further from the end. The answer is, in public administration, we are not talking enough at management level about health and safety at work. Up here, this is the traditional process safety, mining, energy supply. In these industries, it's the norm. The first matter on the board meeting of a petrol company is how many lost time accidents have we had? How many of you, thinking about your management meetings, do you have health and safety on your agenda? Often the reason we see poor management conversation is a lack of awareness. People think, oh, we have no problems, so why do we talk about it? You have problems, you need to find out what they are. But it takes two to tango, as they say in English. We have to have worker engagement. The worker does the job how it is done, not how it's meant to be done. You can have all the manuals you like, but that's not how the work will be done. It will be done how the worker decides to do it. If you don't engage the worker in the hazard identification and risk assessment process, in the selection and implementation of solutions, you are setting yourself up to fail. And this is especially so of addressing psychosocial risks. You cannot change a work culture without the full engagement of the workforce. What we have found in our survey is a simple formula. Worker representation plus management commitment gives a greater chance of there being health and safety measures in place. And when I say worker representation, it is best when there is both the general representation, works councils or the equivalent, and the health and safety representation. You need both to get the good response. You have to have the management buy-in, seeing the value in this worker representation as well. But if you get both, we see exponentially better health and safety management performance. It really is a win-win situation. Once upon a time, when we talked about occupational health, it was seen as a very narrow topic. It would be about the identification of recognized occupational diseases. You have mesothelioma, you've worked with asbestos, you get this pension. That's how health and safety, occupational health very much used to be seen. Now we have to see it far broader. Take, for example, bus drivers. If you think about a bus driver, you can come up with the immediate health risks, accidents, long working times, things like this. But one of the things about bus drivers, they are basically sitting there 8 hours a day on their own. They may not have good food provision. If you are sitting long periods of time and you have a bad diet and you are not doing much exercise, your risk of cardiovascular disease is going up. We have to see health far more broadly. There is a clear relationship between work and health, and that means we have to be thinking far more to work with public health as well as occupational health. If we want to be successful, any intervention we make to improve health, there has to be maximum accessibility and minimum barriers to entry. There's no good setting up a workplace health promotion process. Maybe you think, let's put in mindfulness or a smoking cessation group or something like this. But it only meets every Thursday afternoon in the daytime. That's no good because it may exclude most of the workers who would like to take it up. It's got to be accessible. And if the program requires purchase of equipment or registration fees, you're putting in barriers to entry. The holistic approach must have the clear commitment of the managers and the leading workers. By leading workers, I mean those who are maybe the safety reps or the union representatives, the people who other workers look up to. You need to have them buying in to the process. And if you want to really make a change, just putting in a health promotion program isn't enough. You have to change the workplace. If you really want to improve work and health, you have got to be changing the work organization and the work environment. That may mean putting in sit-stand desks or ergonomic furniture into your workplace. This may mean putting better food into the canteen. This may mean better work organization. A while ago, EU-OSHA looked at the various wellbeing at work programs we could see across Europe. And one of the things we found is there's enormous variation. It means different things to different people. Some of these organizations who put in the wellbeing at work programs, they focused on job satisfaction, some focused on the working conditions, some focused on very much workplace health promotion, others focused on quality of work. Now, quality of work we can define as things like work skills, job prospects, yes, pay, work intensity, all these issues. But we found three common factors. All had this health promotion dimension. All looked to have family-friendly policies, and all engaged with the occupational health and also public health, in some cases, services. Family-friendly policies can mean many things. One example I heard of last week, we had some visitors from Sweden, from basically the public transport sector in Sweden, the bus driving companies. They have what are called divorce shifts. And these are shifts that are set out and reserved for workers who are single parents. So the shifts pattern allows these workers to be able to pick up their kids and drop them off from school. That's a family-friendly policy example, adjusting your work organization to facilitate worker engagement and interaction. So I will close, I think, here. I think you know the place on that one. I think you know that bridge. The other bridge is by my house. It's on the mouth of the Bilbao River. I do recommend coming to the agency, not my house. Our web address is up there at the top. All our information is available free of charge to download. We translate as much as possible into all EU official languages, including Portuguese. Secondly, I would stress we have in every member state what's termed a focal point. Our Portuguese focal point is in ACT. Amelia is here today. So if you want to carry on doing work at the national level, we have her, and she is very active. I do know this. And finally, I would say this. I love coming here because the light in Lisbon is so good. But if you will come to Bilbao, I will promise you that everyone there will tell you that the rain in Bilbao is the best. Thank you very much for listening to me.